The Eagles officially signed wide receiver vet Julio Jones, but is it a good signing and how much can he help the roster really? Plus, Brian Johnson's slightly concerning take on his run-pass philosophy. Donovan McNabb blames A.J. Brown for the Eagles' struggles, but how did A.J. respond? And Defensive Coordinator Sean Desai shared plans for Nakobe Dean's role, so let's talk about it. But first, let's run it. Hey guys, so let's start with the immediate news that the Eagles have officially signed two-time first-team All-Pro receiver Julio Jones to a contract, with Ian Rappaport first sharing that the Birds are signing Julio to the practice squad but expect a quick elevation to the 53-man roster once he's up to speed. But I thought we were supposed to be signing a safety, since like Josh Tolentino of the Inquirer reported, GM Howie Roseman's been spending the last couple days vigorously scouring the rest of the league for external assistance in the secondary according to league sources. I don't know, maybe Howie took a look at some of the 34-year-old's tape and figures the Birds can somehow convert him into a defensive back. Relax, we're gonna sign a safety. And right now, my money's on Carolina's Jeremy Chinn, although who knows, maybe it's Justin Simmons that we end up bringing in. Granted, the trade deadline's still a couple weeks away, so there's more than enough time to make a move. But getting back to the deal with Julio, how are you guys feeling about it? Personally, I'm about where Ben Solak is, saying Julio Jones signing analysis, impact on team performance, minimal. Impact on team vibes, incalculable. Super Bowl inbound. Super Bowl time. Sure, I guess whatever works. And at least AJ Brown's in favor of it, tweeting, "Big bruh." Not really a surprise, since after all, it was AJ who'd been very vocal about recruiting the veteran wideout to Tennessee before the Titans brought in the All-Pro. With Brown saying Jones is the reason he started playing football, and despite the on-the-field lessons being important, the off-the-field examples may have been even more important. But Swole Batman's not alone in his support of the recent pickup, with the Slim Reaper, Devontae Smith, also sharing his thoughts on Julio this summer during off-season workouts, saying, "I always like watching Julio's tape. Guys like him, his route running, his ability to separate, he's one of the best to ever do it. Plus, him being a former Bama guy too, that is special." Alright, yeah, there's no doubt that Julio's special, except we're not really expecting a lot from him here, are we? Yes, I think we all realize prime Julio was unstoppable, but the 6'3", 220-pound mismatch clearly isn't what he once was, with him showing consistent decline over the past couple seasons, like last year where he was targeted 43 times for 24 receptions, 299 yards, and 2 touchdowns. However, like Shane pointed out, at least he's an upgrade over Quez Watkins. Since last season, Jones ranked 101st and 61st in yards per route run and expected points added per target, whereas Fast Batman is dead last among qualifying receivers in yards per route run this season and 153 in expected points added. Clearly a much better option than Quez. But like, really, is that a surprise? I think we all know Quez isn't exactly setting the bar really high.
I'd say in a given week, I probably only do about 15 minutes of real, actual work.
Sorry, Quez, but let's also not forget about receiver Olamide Zaccheaus, who's played fairly well, yet Howie and the staff obviously see too much potential with this signing to bring in Jones as the wide receiver 3 option. I don't know, maybe it's the inability or ineffectiveness in the red zone as to why they're adding the vet. However, it's important to point out, like John McMullen did, the one knock in Atlanta was that Jones was never great in the red zone, or the Falcons didn't use him properly. Jones had 7 1,000-yard seasons, but only 1 10-touchdown season. Yeah, well, if you ever had him in fantasy like me, then you're all too well aware of that. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm glad he wasn't the best in the red zone, since who knows, maybe things would have turned out differently. Yet my hope is that it was just Atlanta not using him properly. At the same time, I can understand the concern about the targets, because as we've all seen, it's been hard enough to get the ball to Smitty, AJ, and Dallas Goedert, let alone other guys. Which is why, as Brandon Lee Gouton wrote, Jones could be used more for his physicality and run blocking if he's truly brought in, since we've seen something like this before when the Eagles were able to successfully integrate ring chasers Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh into their team mid-season last year, and they seem to be confident that they can do it again. Alright, this is where I tend to believe Julio will provide the most value in the running game. I mean, come on, who wouldn't want Julio blocking for him over Oz or Quez? And maybe that's the spark this running game needs, because it hasn't been stellar the last couple weeks, with the Eagles running backs going 14 for 33 against the Jets, 24 carries for 87 yards against the Rams, and 18 carries for 70 yards against the Commanders. So basically, this group is averaging 3.39 yards per carry over the last 3 games.
Not great, Bob.
No, that's not good, but I expect that we'll get the numbers up as long as we remain patient and stick with the running game. However, I'm starting to doubt that with offensive coordinator Brian Johnson's philosophy.
We have really good players at a bunch of different spots, and you know, sometimes you look at some of these runs or some of these passes or extensions of the run game when you start to add in some of the RPOs and bubbles and the swing passes and things like that, of just space touches. You know, a lot of times those are extensions of the run game. So, you know, when you look at a stat sheet and you see it's 45 passes or however many passes it is, but I think that varies when you talk about, you know, that type of pass and then drop back pass.
I'm sorry, but a pass being an extension of the run? Okay, yes, I realize we love our RPOs and sometimes that changes things, but it feels like a cop-out, especially having just run only 14 times against the league's number 29 rush defense, which is why I agree with Lord Brunson that it's the biggest myth ever. Stop looking at the extensions of the run and just run. Of course, it's worth pointing out that Sirianni also defended Brian Johnson, saying he did a nice job against the Jets and that he's done fine. Okay, well, that is if you actually believe he means that, and I respect Sirianni for never throwing a guy under the bus. However, let's just say former offensive coordinator Shane Steichen is missed right about now, with his crafty pick-your-poison game plans that ensured the defense was nearly always wrong. Unfortunately, we haven't seen much of that, with Jeff McClain sharing the Eagles have leaned on their stars more heavily this season, since according to Next Gen Stats, only Miami Dolphins receiver Tyreek Hill has a bigger role in his team's passing attack than A.J. Brown.
That a bad thing?
I don't know. I mean, they are called stars for a reason, although former Eagles QB Donovan McNabb certainly thinks it's number 11's fault.
The complaint from A.J. Brown about not being more involved in the offense and getting the ball.
Yeah.
I go to that because I've seen it before. I understand it. I know as a quarterback, don't want to be involved in it. But what I'm seeing is offensive play calls are being more catered to try to feature instead of establishing a tempo and a consistency from running the football, play action game, quick game, to be able to spread the ball around. Devontae Smith is not getting, I don't care what nobody say, he ain't getting involved in this offense.
I'm sorry, but there's so much to break down here. First off, to compare the ridiculous feud with Terrell Owens to what went on the sidelines between Jalen and AJ against Minnesota is whack. Like one fan said, comparing McNabb and T.O. to Jalen and AJ is like comparing lamb and tuna fish to peanut butter and jelly. Okay, sure, the talent was no doubt there, but we're talking about an entirely different chemistry. Plus, I honestly can't figure out Donovan's target comments, since the targets were spread out pretty evenly on Sunday, with AJ even being third in targets behind DeAndre Swift and Devontae Smith, which is why Brown eventually responded on Twitter saying, "With all due respect, I will repeat that conversation with Jalen was not about targets. Two friends bumped heads about something and moved on. And if you feel that way, keep that to yourself, because the media is going to hold on to everything you say. You, out of all people, should know better."
Just take it easy, champ. Why don't you stop talking for a while?
Maybe sit the next couple plays out. You know what I mean?
Alright, at the same time, I'm still pretty skeptical that conversation on the sidelines wasn't about targets. Either way, not a great take from number 5, which of course didn't take long for Twitter to unearth Lane Johnson's former comment when he said, "And you wonder why nobody respects you when you come back." However, the most ironic part of all of this is that it was either an incredible coincidence or the Eagles Twitter account did an all-time troll job, because after AJ gave his response to McNabb, they posted pics of Jalen Hurts with Randall Cunningham entitled "Past and Present." Okay, I'm sure it was just coincidence, but you can't deny the very interesting timing there. Speaking of past and present, the Eagles officially signed cornerback Josiah Scott to the active roster from the Steelers practice squad. And I guess it makes sense in the short term, especially with the bevy of injuries we have in the secondary, because like Dave Zangaro referenced, Scott is experienced at both nickel cornerback and safety during his time in Philly. In 2021 and 2022, Scott played in 29 games and started 4 for the Eagles, with all 4 of those starts coming at nickel corner in place of Avonte Maddox last season. Now, if you're like me, I don't think Scott's the long-term answer, but neither is Mario Goodrich, who was officially released to make room for the acquisition, and despite neither being an earth-shattering move, there are some positives, like Outside the Birds pointed out. This is a good sign for the health and availability of Reed Blankenship, Bradley Roby, and Eli Ricks. If the Eagles are releasing Mario Goodrich to sign Josiah Scott, that likely means the other 3 are avoiding IR. Because if any of their other DBs were being placed on IR, they likely would have just done that to create a roster spot for Scott instead of releasing a perfectly healthy Mario Goodrich. And just for those counting, technically Goodrich could even be re-signed to the practice squad, assuming he clears waivers, which would allow the Birds 3 elevations. Although, like I mentioned earlier, none of those guys are long-term solutions, and it'd be nice to get a guy we can settle on. But that's not the only position on the defense unsettled, as this this past Sunday versus the Jets, we saw defensive coordinator Sean Desai use the combo of all three linebackers, with Zach Cunningham playing 49 snaps, Nicholas Morrow getting in 36, and Nakobe Dean on the field 32 plays, which Desai believes is a very good problem to have.
I think it was a good situation for us to keep everybody fresh, and that's a big thing for us, is we want to stay fresh, obviously, through the fourth quarter in every game and through the whole season. And we got some good players at that position that are playing really good football for us, so might as well get everybody some shots on goal.
Yeah, I mean, with the way they're playing, I don't see why not. Of course, I'll admit, I thought if Dean was fully healthy, he'd be the guy to play every snap. But even as Dean is nearing game shape, Desai suggested he keep going with a rotation of linebackers.
I think it's really by week and by game, and really what the package and the plan is that we want to do. But we feel confident in any of those guys going out there and executing for us.
You know what? At least we have a surplus in that area, because it doesn't feel like we can say that about a lot of the other areas on the defense. Although the good news is that it's sounding like rookie Jalen Carter can hopefully go on Sunday, as well as cornerback Darius Slay, and even right tackle Lane Johnson is making a push to play as well. So we'll be sure to keep you updated on all the latest around the injury report. Reminder about the Wednesday link at 7 p.m. Eastern, where we'll be breaking down all the latest roster moves, news, and injuries, as well as doing a giveaway. Oh yeah, and I also need some help about where to go for a cheesesteak when I'm in Philly. I realize that's probably opening up a can of worms, but let me know. This has been the Philly Special.